Welcome to Theolife with me, Patrick Stitt, as we launch our course on the General Epistles. The General Epistles encapsulates 7 books in the New Testament. It's sometimes called the General Letters or the Catholic Epistles, depending on whatever side you want to go on. Doesn't particularly matter. Sometimes we throw the book of Hebrews in there, and sometimes we don't. Now, the things that make the General Epistles unique comes down basically to one thing.
They were not written by Paul.
As we know, St. Paul wrote the vast majority of letters in the New Testament, the incredible letters that they are. But the thing that is unique about our General Epistles is none of them were written by Paul. The second unique element about the General Epistles is that their audience is not clear. Let's contrast that with the letters of Paul. Paul's letters come with these fabulous titles like Romans or Corinthians or Thessalonians. Right off the bat, it tells us who the audience is. So one of the really cool things we can do with Paul's letters is we can look at the situation of what was happening at that location, and we can make a determination about the theological elements that come with it. Let's take Corinthians, for example. We know some of the situations that was happening in Corinth, particular things like temple prostitution and economic inequality. Those elements are very well recorded by historians of their age, and we can use that information to color a richer picture for our reading of the books of Corinthians. Historically, they've been ascribed the term general epistles or Catholic epistles. The reason for that was that they were not written to a specific church, but they were written to the general church or the Catholic Church. Catholic meaning universal. As we're going to study these books, though, we're going to see that they were letters written to a specific location to deal with a specific problem unique to that element of society. Unfortunately, for the general epistles, often the audience is very unclear. It's not specifically stated, very rarely anyway. So we have to rely on a lot more digging to figure out information that gives us a picture of the background of these epistles. Point number 3 on the general epistles is the author is not always clear. In 4 out of the 8 books we're going to be studying, the author either doesn't give a name or uses a sobriquet, so we can't really figure out which person was doing it. So we're going to have to dig a little bit deeper to figure out the authorship. But as we're going to learn in studying these epistles,
the author really matters.
So we'll be doing a lot of deep digging into evidence for the authorship of each of these epistles. Point number 4 is they were written by first-generation Christians, almost certainly eyewitnesses to the ministry and resurrection of Jesus, and they were not written by Paul. The final unique element of the general epistles is their classification in the early church. In Eusebius's classification of early church texts, he labels 5 of the 8 books that we're going to be studying as disputed. Now, this does not mean that there was a 50-50 division in the early church. It actually meant that there was a 95% agreement that these letters were genuine, and there was a small group of people that said that maybe disputed the author or the authenticity of the scriptures. But they were generally used by the church at this time and almost universally accepted. I hope this doesn't give anyone a freak out moment.
What? Oh my goodness, you're telling me that they weren't recognized by the early church? Well, that's just terrible. That means they're definitely not part of Scripture, but we can't trust Scripture. If we can't take out one part, we have to get rid of the whole thing. That has just ruined my faith in God.
Please don't let this stress you. We're going to learn a lot about the theology and the philosophy behind biblical inspiration in these books. In particular, Peter and John have a lot to say about this subject, and hopefully by the end of studying their books, you're going to have a richer idea of what it means to be a Bible-believing Christian. The general epistles provide some of the most exciting theology in the entire biblical canon. We are going to learn so much about the early church, about the work of Christ and the power of the Spirit in our lives, just as it was impacting the world in the first century. May God bless you and the Spirit inspire you as we go through this journey together.